Oh, hello. Do you think the Big Brother's watching? Or that the Illuminati is planning to take over the world? Have you happened to have an encounter with a space alien today? Well, if the answer to those questions is yes, then grab your hat. This is tinfoil hat time. Welcome back to tinfoil hat time. This is Tom at Switch to Linux. So today I want to talk about subscribing to Bankruptcy. This is that new trend in business. It's really big. The trend in business is simply a model where the business is selling, instead of products, many businesses have moved to selling subscriptions instead. Of course, the difference between a product and a subscription is if I go out to the store and I buy a product, I have it until, it dies, it breaks, whatever happens to it. And then eventually I can decide if I'm going to buy a new one or not. Well, the subscription model is one where we instead just pay out a certain amount, usually once a month, for whatever that service happens to be. Now, I'm not saying this is all entirely bad, but I think to see and to follow the progression of it all is fascinating. So, I listened to Dave Ramsey quite a bit, and I actually help to teach a financial peace university once a year. And so one of the things that Dave Ramsey says is we have had a shift in the last couple of decades in our culture where we used to ask, how much is something? We'd say, okay, a new car is however much, a new computer is however much. In fact, I remember when I bought my first computer. This is kind of a computer-y channel, so let's talk about that for a minute. The first computer that I bought, the first real computer, I'll say, was, and I described that in the past, it cost me about $2,000, and I was a high school student. So this is a big purchase. By the way, my first car was $500, to give you the frame of reference of the time. So, the computer got a little bit less mileage, I think, but you had to save up your money. And I remember buying my stereo equipment when I was listening to music, and as a teenager as well. And I'd buy, I'd find the equipment that I wanted, or at least something close to the equipment that I wanted, and I'd start saving up the money for it. And then when I'd have enough money, we'd go and we'd buy it. And it kind of became this motivation to work, this motivation to understand the value of a dollar, and knowing how many lawns did I really mow to get my new stereo receiver, or how many lawns did I mow to get the new CD that just had come out. And so there was this shift, though. I mean, that was in the 90s. So there has been this shift where we no longer ask how much is something. We ask how much per month. And this is something that Dave Ramsey talks quite a bit about. And so in light of that, the subscription model has kind of taken over by storm. And I think, according to my research, the first one of these subscription boxes, and I didn't write down the specific names of many of them, I wrote down names of some notable ones, but I think one of the earlier subscription models as far as products was concerned was launched around 2010, and it was basically a conglomeration of companies, or maybe one company that had a lot of small brands, and they would ship out a box once a month with small sample products. Of course, the idea is to get people accustomed to using the products. And it was a brilliant strategy because somebody was literally paying you like $20, $30 a month to have sent to them samples of products for you to buy. Think about that for a minute. That's how crazy our culture is. We buy the product to give us the samples to know where to spend more of our money. And what happens is we become captive to that brand. Now, of course, another place where you could possibly argue this stuff came from is the Netflix model. Of course, Netflix didn't start as the streaming service we know now. It really started when the DVDs were still really in existence, and with the decline of the rental industry. With Netflix, you could go online, you could specify on the internet what you'd like, and then that disc would be shipped to you. You watch it, you have as much time you want, and then you ship the disc back. And that, for that fee and that service, whereas it used to be you'd go to the movie store and rent a movie and it was however much this weekend, Netflix moved from this however much this weekend model to a just pay us this much per month and you can have, you know, these DVDs sent and shipped to you. Of course, and I didn't follow it enough to know, is it unlimited or was it a certain number a month? But at the same time, you know, you couldn't have more than a certain amount at any given time. And so between the difference between shipping and sending and receiving, it usually translated to just a few movies a week. Just by the fact that everything was also through the mail system. And, you know, that's not exactly as quick as sending a text. So with Netflix, though, they got into the streaming system. And so what happened is now you're paying a monthly fee. And I think, what is it? I think it's like $8 to $12 monthly fee to be able to stream different levels of movies, videos, or whatever you're trying to do. And so with people saying, oh, Netflix works, now there's about a bajillion of those systems. You have Netflix, you have your Hulu, you have your Amazon Prime or your big ones. I think iTunes. You know, iTunes showed up in my, maybe it's just because I was looking at media streaming. iTunes, of course, can do more music. I'm not sure if they do TV. I didn't think they did. But anyway, you end up with this model where you're paying per month for a service. Now, with these media subscriptions like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime, it's kind of questionable, and sometimes it's like we talk in the cable world and in the media world of cord cutters, and even as I was doing research on this for a book I'm working on, cord nevers. Okay, so cord cutters and cord nevers. Now, I'm kind of what is called a cord never. Now, in other words, I've never purchased cable television or satellite television. Never. We had it for a couple years when I was a kid, from, I don't know, maybe approximately age 10-ish or so until age 16-ish or so when we moved in the middle of the boondocks and, you know, cable didn't go out there at that time. In fact, it may not even go out there now. Okay, but we lived out there in the little boondocks on a little dirt road, and we couldn't get cable out there. Not that I really cared. Somewhere around 1996 or so when we moved, I really stopped watching much television, and honestly, I don't miss it. I love a good book. I like catching some old TV shows that I'll watch on DVD. If I'm at a friend's house, I love streaming things. I watch a lot of things on YouTube. A lot of the old free content from Hulu is now available on Yahoo View, which actually I'm kind of finding that Yahoo View's cut out a lot of stuff and it really kind of sucks. But anyway, it's not important enough for me, though, to pay Hulu $8 a month. I just don't think into that. But as far as my adult life, I moved into apartments, and for a long time, for me, it was just a maturity thing. I can eat or I can have cable TV, you know, because I followed the route where I did college, and then I did the whole grad school thing, and then, you know, I took 3 years and just to pay off the debt from getting that. Not that that didn't actually accumulate a whole lot, but I paid off the debt that I had. So I never really got to and I didn't watch much television. I think one apartment I rented in grad school had free cable. I think I ran it into the TV once because I had a friend over who said, oh, there's a TV show on you might like. I think I watched an episode of it when they were over, and then I took the thing out and didn't care because I don't care. So I'm what is called a cord never. I never paid for cable television, never paid for satellite, and anytime I have to get a hold of I do use cable internet because it's better, and every time I get a hold of them, I do not ever want to buy, nor will I ever buy cable, so do not promote it to me. Usually does an okay thing. So, all that being said, there's also these things called cord cutters. And these are people who have bought cable TV, which gets outrageously expensive. I think somewhere around, I mean, you can pay up to $100 or so, or $150 or so for cable TV and stuff. And so you get this where you get this cable TV package, and some people are looking at this going, man, there's 700 bajillion channels and nothing on. And so they're like, when most people are moved to this model where you kind of, there's some shows you want to watch, but we don't have the regular schedules like we used to have. And so it just makes a whole lot more sense to just cut the cable completely out and pick up a net streaming service like Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime. The challenge can be, if you start looking at things like what a lot of businesses will do, is they'll package things up so it just looks so much cheaper. Like, your basic internet's $70, but for $85 you can have the cable TV too. And people are like, why not? And then of course you forget that you have the $10 rental box for your modem. Why do you rent a modem from Comcast is beyond me. It's like a 5-month break even to go to some local store and pick up a modem, but people do that. And then you got your cable box fees, which are extra as well. And by the time you're paying all these fees and your cable and everything else, you end up paying a whole lot of money for this service. It's cheaper to just go with the internet. And if you really need a streaming service, pick up one streaming service, just one. Okay, I know people with all sorts of accounts all over. It's like, what do you need all these accounts for? Just pick one. Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, pick one. I think overall Amazon Prime seems to be the best deal. I think it has a lot of shows, although I think it might have more movies, less TV type programs. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't really use the subscription services. Not much. But as far as the pricing is concerned, I think the Amazon Prime is quite a bit cheaper. Like I said, I'm not sure if it has those. Please let me know. Let me know in the comments. I did some basic research here, but I'm not. I don't actually have any of these. Now, the next thing that we encounter on top of these media subscription services, which I can kind of understand a media subscription service, especially if you're a cord cutter, cord never, you don't have cable TV, you have a good internet connection, and you pick up something like a Netflix or Hulu or an Amazon Prime so you can watch movies on demand. I get it. I mean, I get it. As a guy that when I was mentoring some kids when I lived out west, every weekend we'd go out and we'd rent a few movies. And, I get it. And if I added up the amount that we had paid for movies, it was probably approximately what you might pay for a monthly subscription to a Netflix or something. I mean, it wasn't an outrageous amount because we'd get the movies, we'd take them back immediately. So because we'd take them back the next day, we'd get almost the whole movie back on credit. And so I think I threw a couple bucks in there, kind of as seed money, and then every time we watched a movie, it ended up being like 50 cents for 2 or 3 movies. It ended up being maybe half the price of Netflix. I don't know. But then we have the next one, which makes less sense to me. Not total no sense, but a lot less sense. And this is the food subscription boxes. So my neighbor, and this really always cracked me up, my neighbor had Blue Apron as theirs. So every about a couple times a week, I'd see a Blue Apron box on the floor. We had 4 apartment complexes right there. I'd go in up there, and there's one of them there has a Blue Apron box there a few times a week. So I look into that. The Blue Apron, the smallest one you can get is 10 meals a delivery, or $10 a delivery, which is supposed to feed 2 people. But I've looked into these boxes before. Like a friend of mine got one from HelloFresh, and I looked at one of those boxes, and the amount that they actually give you on that box it's arguably potentially enough to feed 2 people, and in reality, it's really designed so it's enough food that it's what 2 people should eat, but in our American culture, it really is a 1-person meal in all reality, at least what we are used to. But they're expensive. It's like, $10 for one of these things comes in, and it's certainly cheaper than going out to a restaurant or something, but still, it's extra stuff. It's too few items in the box for what you're getting. And I looked at this and scratched my head profusely because we had a major supermarket 2 minutes away. Literally 2 minutes away. It was not even a mile. It took me 20 minutes to walk to it. Okay? It's just like, and inside of these things, you get like a piece of chicken, like a pepper, a little package of pre-processed seasoning. So it really wasn't all that good for you anyway. Hello, fresh package of processed crap. Whatever. I'm not sure what was in the Blue Apron ones, like I said, but these are nothing special. I mean, you can go out and pick up the spices and pick up the food at the local supermarket. Now, who does it make sense for? Well, it makes sense if you're like so totally busy that you're just like, you know. But if you're that totally busy, slow down. It's like a comedian I heard once said, have you ever read the instructions for how, the microwave instructions for a Pop-Tart? I think they adjust them a little bit. It's like you open up the Pop-Tart, you take it out of the wrapper, you put it in the microwave, and you microwave it for 2 seconds. I think it's up to 3 or 4 seconds now, last time I looked. And of course, the comedian had to jump on that and said, if your life's so busy that you got to cook your meal in 2 seconds, you need to simplify things, okay? Truly, honestly. If you're picking up these things because you're too busy to go to the grocery store, you're too busy. Slow down a little bit, honestly. Okay, slow down a little bit. It's cool. Now, the other person that might make some good sense for is if you live way out in the boondocks and the local grocery store is a good 10 minutes away, 20 minutes away, 30 minutes away, hour and a half away, you know. It almost makes sense at that point in time to order those in because at that point in time, by the time you encounter all the gas and all that kind of stuff, it might almost be worth it. But you should still be able to plan. But the challenge is looking at these monthly subscriptions and how the Blue Apron's pricing model works, that ends up being something to the effect of $60 a week. A week. And that's not breakfast, lunch, dinner. That's dinner. For 2. That's crazy. Now you get to a little bit more weird, obscure things like there's the Carnivore Club. It's a subscription box of meat. Not to be confused with the 15 or so sex toy subscription boxes. We'll get there in a minute. And no, I didn't look them up. I don't want to know. So kind of the food ones can almost make some sense to me, but still I really think these are more about the businesses putting together package deals to give you little samples to sell you more stuff. I really think that's what's going on here. This is a deep, elaborate plan where we are paying our money for them to give us samples so we can pay them more money. Stop asking how much per month. Ask, do you really need it? And if so, how much is it? Obviously, we're talking about food. You need to buy some every month. But can we really justify $60 a week for a meal for 2 delivered a few times a week? Now, and then we get into the things that I find totally unnecessary. Niche boxes. Bark box? A subscription box for your dog. It starts at $20 a month. You go onto the website at barkbox.com, I think it is, and you select which plan you want based upon the size of your dog. Is your dog this big, or is it this big, or is it this big? And then based upon that, it starts your pricing at, I think it was between 20 and 30 or so a month. And then once a month, on a $20 a month subscription, you get a box for your dog. And I guess the humans that have it, they're weird. Not to be outdone, there's Meowbox too. Meowbox as well for your cat. I'm just scratching my head. That one, of course, I don't know why, but the Meowbox starts at $23 a month. Then we get all sorts of other weird things like junk food boxes, snack foods, junk foods. I call it junk foods, snack foods. Here's your snack food box. Again, I'm paying them, and I think those started around like 30, 40 bucks a month. I'm paying $30, $40 a month to a company who's holding me captive by them being promoted products and probably being paid by the other company to include samples of their products in the box so I know what to look for next time I go to the store. You wonder why I call this subscribing to bankruptcy. It's because it's all about subscribing, because we are a country that is so far in debt as people. So far in debt as people. Okay? Now, we have junk food, cats, dogs, coffee. I'm an avid coffee drinker. I wouldn't put my coffee on a subscription. Is it that difficult when I get low in coffee to pick some up when I go to the grocery store? And FYI, my refrigerator doesn't have to tell me when I'm low. I'm quite capable of seeing it myself. Of course, one of the more popular men's one is the shaving one. Cheaper, better razors. The amount I buy razors, it's not really worth it for me. But of course, I think they're realizing that people don't buy that many razors. So now they're selling butt wipes. Get your razors, your shaving butter, and your butt wipes on subscription services. Oh, Lord help this crazy country. So according to Wikipedia, when I was looking up the history of subscription boxes, there's about 15 or so subscription sex box toys between US and Australia. I think one major company in Australia leading me approximately 14 here. I don't want to know. But according to Wikipedia, they exist. Can't tell you how much they cost. I don't want to know. I don't want to know what's in them. Not at all. I'm wondering, is it a male-only box? Is it the male gay box? Is it the female box? In fact, the most disturbing thing I encountered as I was reading about this, because I was kind of intrigued, and so the furthest I went digging into this is on the Wikipedia article. I went down to the reference about these 15 or so sex toys, and apparently I even found that there is, I mean, do you remember the Avon lady and the Tupperware parties? There's one of those for sex toys, direct market sex toys with yeah. That's all I've read on the article. I'm done, man. I'm next time I'm just gonna be totally covered in foil. I want nothing to do. I mean, this is crazy. Roger, save me. Subscription services that are gone haywire. But there's a bigger concern. And obviously Switch to Linux is more of a computer channel. And so I want to dive into what I consider my real concern. And that is what this subscription model has been doing to software. As more and more companies realize that we are fascinated in subscription models, it gets to a bad degree when we're putting our dog treats and our butt wipes on subscription. Once that happens, anything goes. I mean, anything goes. It's just crazy. But what the software companies noted is that we are interested in paying subscription services. And some of them are justified, some of them may not. So the big example I talk about in my article here is when I purchased Adobe Photoshop. Now, as a web developer, I like to have some of the software. Now, I started my business doing all my coding manually on WordPad. But, you know, having the good tools is better. And back at that time, there were probably a few open source programs, but they really weren't as developed as they are now. And CS5 happened to come out. So the day CS5 came out, I'm like, ooh, let's see if I can snack up an old CS4. So I ended up finding a CS4 copy at like, 60% off or something because the Amazon's trying to clear the inventory. And so I snagged one of those up. I had an extra $1,000 in my account. I snagged up a copy of CS4. So I have the whole Creative CS4 full professional license for it that I paid $1,000 for, which if you know anything about Adobe products, that's a really good price. And I'm still using it on my Windows computers. You know, I still am running my Windows 7 computer, which has a lot of my design on it. And if you think of it, I paid $1,000 for that, and that was about 6 years ago. So if I take my $1,000 and I divide that by 6 years, that means $166 per year. Oh, bummer. Apparently the clear button on an Android calculator doesn't work quite right. And I want to go 12. So that ends up being like $13.88 per month is what I get. And that's kind of what I've quote unquote paid. Now, the biggest problem is the Adobe Suite right now, you can no longer purchase just the standalone product. I cannot purchase whatever the latest version of Photoshop, this whole suite. And because I don't use just Photoshop. I use, on a daily basis, I use usually Photoshop and Dreamweaver for things. I also use Acrobat quite a bit. I use Illustrator every now and again. I use Soundbooth every now and again. What else is in there? Let's see, Fireworks. I don't generally use Fireworks. There's probably some other ones in there as well. I used to use Bridge a lot. I haven't used Bridge much for a while though. All that being said, to get that type of package with Adobe right now costs $840 per year. That means in 1 year, I'm paying, I'm paying a little bit less per year than I paid for the software 6 years ago. Now, it used to be when you purchased your software, you'd want to purchase a new one when the developers made it good enough to overcome the barrier that you needed to update. So when I got my very first computer, I had Windows 95. And with my Windows 95, I got Office 95 with it. And Office 97 came out. I looked at Office 97 and go, there's some neat features, but not enough to upgrade. And I maintained that. And I think the next one I bought was Office XP. And so I have a full copy of Office XP laying around in my office as well. And I ran the Office XP from the time I bought it, probably around 2002, 2003 is when I guess I bought it. And I ran that all the way up until I was a college professor. And the school I taught at the time, they gave everybody a copy of 2003, I think it was. So I had that installed on my computer for a little bit. But since I no longer worked at the university, the license expired on that. So as I left the university, I purchased a copy of Office 2007. And that's still what I'm running on my computer. I don't want 10. I don't need anything else. There's no features that's been seriously added that I really need that on my computers. So I still have that copy on my Windows computers. But now, at least, I am very pleased in my research that Windows, or Microsoft rather, still offers the one-time purchase, which is starting at about $150 for the student, home and student, and then it goes on up from there depending on, do you want Outlook, do you want Access, what do you want? And so you can still buy that, which is great. I'm predicting in the next few years that's going to go away. But with almost all the software, even the ones where you can still purchase the standalone desktop version, they're making it harder and harder to find them. Microsoft's was very easy to find. I decided to look up QuickBooks because I use QuickBooks for my business still on the Windows computer. And as I looked into that, that actually took me quite a while. You can still purchase the desktop versions, but it took me a while to find them on the site. If I go into the site, on Intuit's site, on QuickBooks, and I go down to pricing, they did not give me any of the desktop options. Everything they gave me was the subscription models starting at $10 a month. And I cannot remember what I paid for QuickBooks. And it was, I want to say I have the 2010 or 2011 edition. I can't remember which one. I probably paid, I don't know, $150, $200 for it. I don't remember. So basically, though, what's happening is all of these major software companies, the other one I don't mention in my article because my brother's a game designer, is 3ds Max. 3ds Max, you used to be able to purchase at a one-time fee. And so, you know, however you get that done, you get that done. Well, they've done away with that. Now, if you want 3ds Max, you're paying $185 per month on a monthly service plan. I think if you buy a year of it, it might be a little bit less monthly breakdown. But basically, you cannot, just like the Adobe products, you cannot just buy a copy to have on your computer. It has to be a subscription model. And that is a huge problem in my mind, because I want to purchase a software and have the software for able use of my computer. I don't want the software to stop working in a year or in a month or whatever else. Because I don't know if you've experienced the times, but I have experienced the times when things get lean. And when things get lean and I still need to get my work, the last thing I would need to have happen if I'm having a lean couple of months in my web design company and I can't pay my monthly fee for Adobe, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot if I don't have a working copy of Dreamweaver, if I'm relying on that. That's a big problem with the subscription model. So what do we do about all this? Well, first I'll tell you this. This is Switch to Linux. I keep doing that. The logo's over here. Okay, this is Switch to Linux. And here on Switch to Linux, we're about Linux systems. We're about open source software. We're about free software. Basically software that we can utilize. Did you know there are very fine versions of a lot of these programs I've been talking about? My video intro is done with the open source and free version of 3ds Max, Blender, and it's a full 3D rendering system. Does the same thing. You have your 3D stage, you have to set up your camera angles, you have to do your manipulations, your vectors, your colorations, all these things, your motions, your animations. It's basically like a 3D version of Flash. And so really in that program, I picked that up and built that intro screen in about a week without any experience on the program. So and I was trying to help out somebody with 3ds Max. I couldn't find any tutorials on 3ds Max, but Blender tutorials are all over the place. If you want a Photoshop-y type thing, GIMP Shop is a pretty good substitute. In fact, if you use GIMP Shop enough, you'll get to the point, I think, where it really will be a good substitute. You can get to the point where you're good enough with GIMP that it is a real substitute for Photoshop. Instead of Dreamweaver on all my Linux computers, I run Bluefish, which, frankly, I have no issues at all with. Particularly on Linux Mint Cinnamon Edition, where I can throw an FTP file, I can throw an FTP site on the basic Nemo window and then use that to access a live file server with Bluefish. So you have that option. There is a program called GNU Cash, which is a open source free version of QuickBooks. That one is one that's on my list to learn. I don't know quite as much about it. Now, where do we get the challenges? Well, some of the greater products and basically like your cloud service type products. These products are a little bit harder to deal with because the structure may not be there in the Linux systems, at least not for free. And I think for a service like that, you wouldn't expect it to be free. Now, there is one, and I totally forgot to pick up the name of it before I did this. But there is actually a open source free version of basically like a replacement for Google Apps for Work. And I cannot remember the name of it. I've looked at it before. But it is actually on my list of things to do to get that working. I'm still trying to figure out the logistics. Do I throw that on an actual web server out there somewhere where my regular businesses are hosted? Or do I put that on an internal server in my house and utilize a VPN to access it? I'm still working with that system, but that's kind of where I'm going. Overall, though, realize that some of these services I get. I mean, I get a Netflix if you don't have cable and you're wanting to stream some things. I get it. It's not something that I'm going to do, but I get it. Food boxes, maybe. I would really encourage you to look at the prices. I mean, most of them have the recipes available. If you like the recipes, look at the recipes and use that as your shopping list. Plug it into your refrigerator, I guess. I don't know. Niche boxes, I'm at a loss. I'm at a loss for niche boxes. Okay, according to Dave Ramsey's website, when they do detailed statistics on this, I think they said, I thought I put the numbers here, but I guess I didn't. Oh yeah, that's it. 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. That means if the job goes away, we're sunk. Okay, 78% paycheck to paycheck. With 78% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck and subscription services being the fastest growing industry, somebody's not watching their budget. And that's what we need to do. We need to stop subscribing to Bankruptcy. Ask yourself, do you really need all these services we're getting? I remember a time in grad school I went completely without internet at home because I couldn't afford it. Stop asking how much per month and go into the model where you are instead asking how much. Or even better, do I need it? Anything to prevent us from falling into this model where we are so close to bankruptcy. Average student loans right now is about $35,000 and the average car payment's about $450 a month. We got a debt crisis in this country, and it's not just the national debt. It starts with us as people. And I think these subscription services and all these subscription models is hurting us more than it is helping us. And we need to step back and stop making the subscription service models so profitable and so successful. We need to just slow down on that. I get some of them. But these niche boxes, do we need to pay 30, 40, 50 bucks on a subscription box for our dog? That's crazy. That's crazy. Meow box? Meow. Here's a new catnip toy. Really? We are subscribing ourselves to bankruptcy. Stop asking how much per month and going, oh, it's just $5. Because just $5 adds up a whole lot when you got 10 of them. I encourage everybody listening to this who's made it this far, look at all your subscription things. Look at your credit card statements. Look at all these auto billing statements and auto whatever statements. And ask yourself, can I really afford this? Or am I subscribing to bankruptcy? This has been Tom with Switch to Linux and a tinfoil hat time.